at some of these questions that people sort of anecdotally have in the community.
And you want some expertise to come
so
in.
like you don't want to do the report and miss that.
Yeah, so I think
Exactly.
the task 2 community questions is really something worth narrowing in on to make
Yeah.
sure that anything specific to us is asked within there, and then the recommendations would follow up on that, so absolutely.
And I think that underscores why it's important to have a face-to-face meeting, have them present
Yep.
to us,
Yep.
so we know it's not cookie cutter, we know they'll be able to address our specific questions.
I'm sorry, just to John's point, so with respect to the nuanced, our specific or nuanced questions, do you feel like you know what those are?
Yeah, I've heard some today, obviously,
Right.
and there's some in here already that, probably are a little more generic, but I can double back on these and just confirm that things I'm hearing in my office
Yeah.
or program-wise are being covered. Senior Resource Center's been talking to me since I got here about specific things they have.
So you've got their feedback?
Yeah, so I think number 7 specifically was given from them.
Yep.
So I've given them the copy prior to this meeting, so I think, yeah, really making sure that we get those specific things in here before we issue it is a good first step. Just quickly in terms of procedure, I brought it up for discussion today because quite honestly, I'm very busy with the transportation one right now,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
in terms of like stacking them
I'm thinking
up,
ahead, yeah.
I just wanted to get this out here so we can think about it with the concept of perhaps considering issuing in July for, I believe it's for August to start with, so.
What?
CDA pay for a portion or not?
We would, yeah.
Yeah.
This would be us.
Yeah, so we would then get the bids back and hopefully be able to find the funds to cover whichever consultant we're looking to study, but, yeah, so I wanted to
That
get
is
out
another
there.
point, just on the funding.
Yes.
We've spent, I mean, we have the general,
It falls within our.
it does, but we've spent the 30,000 on the transportation
Right.
study, so there is a question about,
But last year didn't spend any.
that's fair enough, yep.
I mean, I think the specific populations, I mean, it might help to think about populations that I think we're interested in, or I shouldn't speak for the CDA since I just got here, but seniors, people with disabilities, and there's a pretty sizable number of people who live here because they don't have to have a car and
Right,
can take the
it's
bus,
easy,
blah, blah,
right,
blah.
right, yeah.
Okay, so seniors, people with disabilities, families with children, young children, is that it? I'm saying it like I have a fourth, but I really don't. I think that's it, right?
Those are pretty much in here already, I would say, contemplated in here.
The only other one that I hesitate to bring up just because it's such a awkward issue is Airbnb and short-term rental, how that's impacting any potential housing market, because my office has gotten calls of people just, purchasing a house to do specifically for that type of use, and state legislation doesn't allow us to ban it, so it's kind of creeping in as it's allowed, so, but that's once again a very nuanced question that I don't know if there's a lot of data on or impact on, but in terms of the young families with children, that's one of the arguments have been given against why we shouldn't perhaps allow us to creep any further, because it's taking away units from people that would be renting with the children for the school district, et cetera. And the whole purpose of the program initially was to help attract those and keep them in the community. And now if you're owning a duplex and is specifically renting out the weekends for that, that's one less family that can live here, right? So that has come up. It's a very nuanced question, but I think I will try to work it in here somehow.
I think we could put it together with corporate housing, because I've heard the Cornerstone is used a lot for corporate housing, and I mean, what's the difference between corporate housing and a rental, but there is a difference in terms of, is that person has that person chosen Shorewood and is part of the Shorewood community? So maybe that'd be like a little broader way.
Right. So the desirability of our location and of our housing stock has brought other people in that might be pushing out families with children, things like that, so.
Do you think, again, and I know nothing about housing studies or anything, but, I feel like one of Shorewood's goals is to, again, be a diverse community. I think we find strength in diversity, which I think is appropriate. So to me, again, I don't know that that's a specific thing you could put in a study, but, that is our goal. That is one.
You get at that with affordability.
Well, I don't know. I mean, partly, but and again, I don't know if the housing study is the right venue
Right.
to ask that question, but I feel like there is some applicability, or at least worth the question of if your goal is diversity of population and across the multiple components of diversity,
Right.
is there something we should be thinking about or doing or to help drive that?
And the demographic, review should help identify whether or not we are, in line or could be more, or whatever, so it should touch on that. So yeah, but making it specific if that's a community goal, I think is worth including. Whether or not this is a study to answer that full question, but at least they can give us information that can help
They're trying to work
frame
that
the
in.
question.
Right.
Yeah,
There's certainly, I know in the Estabrook Gardens, there's, at one point, there were a lot of East Asian families, and I think sometimes groups cluster. I mean, I think they came because they were interested in the schools, and, you sort of get a little bit of a rolling momentum.
Right.
But again, the other thing about this stuff is it changes, we could get this in next year, it could be completely different,
Different.
so, I don't know.
Yeah, as long as there's no institutional barrier to those things,
Mhm.
right, the market shifts, so.
But if we keep in mind, like, what are the possible policy, what are options for policy, because we may not have a lever to push
Yeah.
on diversity, for example,
Yeah.
or, so if we don't have a lever to push, then let's not spend
yes,
a lot of
sure,
time studying
agreed,
it,
yes.
Which is sort of starting at the end instead of starting at the beginning, but whatever.
Well, so, Bart, thank you for pulling that together. I think it's,
Yeah, so-
I appreciate the thinking forward, we're gonna be ready to go.
Yeah.
and-
If there's thoughts within the month, feel free to share it to me, and then I'll bring it back in July for
Okay.
greater discussion and potential consideration.
Okay, and then I think we're on, item 8, plan review. I think we had all agreed that would be a good idea to, review documentation, make sure we're all on the same page. I think this is, it's kind of part of orientation that we thought was a good idea, and so I think we had reached out for dates, and we could not find a date that everybody could meet, so I think this is revisiting that to see, and I had suggested we put out another.
Yeah, so my understanding is the main question is staff, both Becky and I can't find a time that we can both make it in June, and June is quite honestly very full of other things right now, so the discussion was if the CDA felt comfortable doing this, without staff, June would still be an option. If you're looking for staff to be more involved to participate, Becky and I have outlined July possibilities. And so that's just kind of where we're at right now in terms of when the next doodle poll will be sent out. If it's, June is very booked, I think, for the board members as well.
Again, I don't think, I don't, for purposes of this year, I don't think timeliness is not the most important thing. And with that said, I would say that staff involvement is important. Given the role staff plays in this, given the knowledge that staff has about this, I think conversation with staff involved is.
And I think we
much
acknowledge
more
that too, and we're just being honest with our availability, so.
And I don't, again, for this year, I wouldn't have a problem going to July or
Okay.
August. I think it's just something we would like to do. I think it's helpful. We're obviously seating a new group. We'll have a new member at some point, so, their first meeting will be the July meeting, so, one could argue maybe we look at August where they've settled for one
Sure.
or two meetings, and then we have our session of education. And then the other thing to think about is sort of, then to me, on an annual basis, I think we try to have, well, I think you and I can talk about it, but I think we try to do something on an annual basis. Maybe that thing is just for new CDA members. And sitting members can participate if they like, but it's more of the orientation thing that we can do. And again, I think we'll have more flexibility in the future when we're just talking about a subgroup of the CDA. But this year, I think it's important for the whole group to be together.
Okay.
This might make me very popular, but I'll say the thing is, what if we took like the meeting in August? I think if it's a 7, I don't know if it's a 7:30 start or not. If it's a 7:30 start, extending it on the back end by an hour, that way we know we're all here, we all already have it on our calendar, staff is here, as opposed to trying to do a doodle poll.
Well, and we've also in the past, summertime gets fairly quiet. We've actually canceled meetings in the past because we don't have enough agenda items. I feel like August is one that we've canceled a few times, so using that maybe, you know, that's a good point, we should definitely think about that. It's hard to know what we're.
I don't think staff is opposed to that. The conversation initially came up of it being a more casual, perhaps off-site,
yes.
you know, meeting.
Could do
So-
breakfast at Blue's Egg around the table.
Even the CDA used to meet there and people got mad about it, but I think it's okay for one meeting.
One meeting, yeah.
Right, because nobody knew, and
Yeah.
it was just people sitting around a table. That's a good idea.
So why don't you,
Yeah, I can touch base with Becky,
Yes.
when we're both back in the office together.
The first August meeting.
that first August meeting, you know,
Look at that perhaps.
I might have to move that first.
Oh, you're not gonna be here?
They'll be in Africa.
Oh.
Lane's going to Africa for that CIED, Studio Blood Program, and we're gonna go visit her, so.
Cool. What
Anyway.
country- What country just like?
Senegal.
Wow.
All right.
That'll be a broadening experience.
Yes, definitely. All right, so, yeah, touch base with
So is the
Becky. I think-
current desire to see if the
Yeah,
regular
let's-
August meeting would work?
Yeah, again, I think given the seating of the new CDA, that timing makes the most sense.
So I'll just touch base with her on, in terms of agenda items, things that need to be on that, or could be pushed or held
Yes.
differently.
Yeah,
If that
But
meeting's
if
available.
we need to move that meeting, do you, I mean, we should,
I do, yeah,
so it can't be the first Friday in
Yeah.
August, have to be the second?
yes,
Second Friday?
yeah.
What's the date of that meeting?
August 11th. Just looking at my calendar.
Oh, it is? So it's
I could
it's
be
on the
right.
4th right now?
Well, that's the day before my birthday, so buy me a
2 days.
drink.
Better than the day
August
after.
9th,
Well-
August
On the
9th,
12th, on the 2nd.
August 9th is the second
On
Friday.
Friday.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, you don't have to buy me a drink.
All right, that's perfect.
Yeah, we're back for August and sports and stuff like that. You're around West?
I'm around.
Obviously, yeah, I guess that brings up we won't have the new members' availability. Right?
Not, I mean, we can't get that immediately, but I'm
Exactly.
expecting on June 17th, or when's the next board meeting, that would be, we know the 18th, then I could include him on the
Didn't
request.
we appoint
Yes.
him?
We just had, we pended it until he submitted the application package.
Oh, okay.
So then-
So presuming that goes forward, I think.
He? Do you say he? It's a
Yeah,
he?
Dusty.
Just trying to keep diversity on this committee.
Well, that's true.
Not that I help
But he
that. I'm the
knows,
front.
he knows a heck of a lot about housing stuff.
That helps, that's good, I like that.
Just have him write the study.
Okay, I believe the last item is part of your monthly report.
Yeah, and I always kind of hesitate to go into this line by line,
No,
so
I-
if
you know,
if there's things that people
yeah.
see in it, feel free to, yeah.
What is a shipping container restaurant?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was so that particular person had come back from New Zealand, where it was a very popular, like temporary restaurant, retail kind of thing, so I've seen them in San Francisco as well too, where.
So it's like a mobile,
Yeah,
That's that kind of thing.
Is it actually good at shipping?
Yeah.
they put it in the back of a truck and move it around.
Yeah. Yeah, so he currently operates, this particular gentleman operates like a pizza, food truck kind of thing, right? He was just looking to see whether or not he could, the village would be interested in, we place shipping containers here and invite other people to do it and have more, lively, interchangeable activities. There's a lot of questions in terms of, that versus someone who pays taxes at a brick and mortar store, so, but it's an interesting concept that seems to be popping up a lot of places.
Where are they talking about putting it?
So that was the conversation that we had. He was looking for places that the village, in theory, might have available, and he was specifically asking about parks.
Oh, God.
And I kind of tried to steer away from that, just understanding the recent history of the conversations in Atwater. So that, I will be honest, that was one of the places that he was considering, like, would the village be interested in doing that? If not, he was also looking at private sites, the Queensway Cleaners, just, putting it in the parking lot for now while that's, being redeveloped, so
Just like, how do taxes work on something like that? There are no, they're not contemplated, right?
I don't know.
Lot more questions.
Yeah, I was gonna say-
Yeah, that's.
It's an interesting.
all these like disruption economy kind of things
Yes.
bring a lot of questions with them that staff struggles with. But I'll be honest, it was an introductory conversation. He wasn't looking at doing it this year. He was just kind of seeing if we were available to it.
And
Where I
agree.
have seen it, it's kind of interesting, you know,
It is,
it's, but,
yeah.
you know, the question is, you know, how would that manifest itself in Shorewood? If you had a dead site like Queensway Cleaners, I don't know what's
Yep.
going on with that site
Yep.
and whether it's gonna be, you know, if there's environmental issues or
Yep.
anything, that's a way to have like activity in that particular place.
Absolutely,
But,
yeah.
Well, and I guess, I mean, we also wanna be cognizant of our existing, you know, if it's,
Yes.
if it's
Yes, from a
additive
competitive
to our
standpoint.
existing, you know, I don't want it to take away from the restaurants we already.
Right.
I'm not hearing a demand for more restaurants necessarily in the village. So, I mean, I feel like so I think that's something we would certainly wanna.
And I did mention to him that we have these stalls in front of the Metro Market that I think were contemplated for a similar kind of use that aren't really being utilized either, so I don't wanna, add more to that kind of mix, but it was just a conversation,
okay.
honestly, but interesting enough that it
Now,
popped up.
where are those events that I was reading about with like a whole bunch of trucks? I mean, that would be, might be a fun thing at the Queensway Cleaner site,
Right.
have
Food
like.
trucks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like have 2 or 3 food
Like a
trucks on a
festival.
Friday.
Yeah, like a
I think
temporary
Draft and
event.
Vessel did that, right?
Yes.
Last summer, Draft and Vessel was done. talking
Especially
about-
if you have it on a particular day, like
Yeah.
a food truck Friday or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Right, we don't have a lot of, businesses, that would, because downtown it makes sense, because you have a lot of employees that
Yes.
walk out
That's
during
true.
lunch for things like that, so that's where we've struggled sometimes with those kind of temporary things. We tried that in West Dallas as well, in downtown West Dallas, and it was like, but where are all the employees gonna be walking from? No one ever walked there, so
Right,
they
right.
came, and then the demand wasn't there, so. In order to attract that, you have to have that, so then we switch ours to at night during the farmer's